Hello friends and welcome to StudyIQ. I am Joycey Joy and today we will be discussing about the wholesale and retail inflation rates. So we will see what is the controversy here or what is the differences between the wholesale inflation rate and the retail inflation rate and why it is confusing for the policymakers. Very important topic. This is an analytical topic. Here we will cover very less number of facts, but from analytical perspective very important. Also, this topic will give you a clarity or a clear idea regarding many of the articles that appear in the newspaper recently regarding inflation rates in India. So, this is going to be an analytical lecture. Let us begin. Before that, we will be discussing what is the current affair. We will discuss concepts like WPI, CPI, etc. We will also discuss about the data that is available regarding WPI and CPI. What are the highlights of the data? We will also see how we can compare the WPI with that of CPI or otherwise, and we will also see what are the reasons or why is the data like this. So we will see that, and we will also analyze whether such type of happening has happened in the past. Now we will also see what will be the impact of this data that is available on the policy making. So these are the topics that we will be discussing today in this lecture. Let us first begin with the current affair. So let us come to the current affair. In the current affair, we will see that the WPI and the CPI for October is available. So WPI is wholesale price index and CPI is consumer price index. So the data for WPI and CPI, wholesale price index and consumer price index for the month of October 2019 is available, and there is a controversy here. Now what is the controversy? The controversy is that the WPI, that is the wholesale price index inflation, which measures the inflation at the wholesale level, it is a 40-month low. So the WPI inflation is very low, whereas the CPI, which measures the retail inflation rates, it is a 16-month high. So this means that the CPI or the retail inflation in the economy is very high, whereas the WPI in the economy is very low. Why this has happened? So why there is a difference between both of this? Now, you may know that the measurement of inflation in India is done by WPI and CPI. So, these are the two measurements of inflation in India. So, why should there be a controversy or a difference between both these measures? This is what we will be discussing today. So, this is the current affair. Now, having understood what is the current affair, let us move on. And to remind you, you might be seeing many articles in the newspapers recently regarding the WPI and CPI. So you need to understand what is the basic of this. So what is CPI? What is the concept of CPI? What is the concept of WPI? All these needs a clarity. So that is what we will be trying to do in this lecture. Also we will analyze why this has happened. So very important lecture. So let us move on to WPI and CPI. Let us now understand what is wholesale price index and what is consumer price index or CPI. Now first coming to WPI, wholesale price index, it tracks the inflation at the producer level. So WPI tracks inflation at the producer level, whereas CPI, the consumer price index, it tracks inflation at the retail level or it tracks retail inflation. Now moving on to WPI again. All the transactions at the first point of bulk sale in the domestic market is included in the WPI. That is, all the wholesale transactions in the market is included under the WPI. Now coming to CPI, it measures the price changes from the perspective of a retail buyer. So in the first case, that is in WPI, the inflation is measured from the angle of a seller. Now second one, it is measured from the perspective of a retail buyer, not a wholesale buyer. Make it very clear that it is a retail buyer, not a wholesale buyer. So this is what CPI and WPI does. So these are the two measurements of inflation that we use in India. And these measurements give us an idea about the inflation rates in the economy. And why inflation rates are very important? Because only after getting an idea about the inflation rates, the policy makers can make respective policies. For example, the monetary policy by the RBI. The most important component that influences the monetary policy of RBI is the inflation rates. Now again, fiscal policy of the government. The central government takes the fiscal policy. It includes many policies, including the allowance of dearness allowance. So all these policies are adopted on the basis of the inflation rates in the economy. Now for your understanding, another important fact, from the year 2015 onwards, CPI is used as a nominal anchor for measuring inflation. That is, the consumer price index is used as a nominal anchor for measuring the inflation and making policies. So monetary policy since 2015 considers CPI for making policies. So this is also very, very important. All these facts are very important, but when we talk about inflation, it is very important to analyze what is the issue. So we'll be doing that. So let us move on. Let us come to the data that is available regarding the WPI as well as regarding the CPI. So let us first see WPI, that is Wholesale Price Index. The official data for the month of October 2019, it showed that the WPI inflation in the country has grown or increased by just 0.16%, which is a 40-month low. So the inflation growth rate for WPI in this month is just 0.16%, and this growth of WPI is the lowest in the last 40 months. Now on the contrary, we have seen that for CPI based inflation, it is a 16-month high. Now when we compare the WPI data with that of the last year, that is October 2018, in October 2018, the growth of the WPI based inflation was 5.5%. Now it has come down to 0.16%. Now, second important fact that the data reveals is that the rate of wholesale inflation is falling steadily. So there is a steady fall in the rate of inflation at the wholesale level. Now, third one, so this deceleration in the wholesale prices has happened despite a significant jump in the wholesale food prices. So we have seen that the wholesale price index inflation has come down, but the food prices at the wholesale level has steadily increased. So why this difference or controversy has happened? We will analyze that. Now when we talk about the rise in the food prices at the wholesale level, there is almost a 40% increase in the prices of vegetables, and again almost a 17% increase in the prices of pulses. Now again when we talk about other commodities, the spices, cereals, all this have experienced an increase in the prices. So even though the food commodities at the wholesale level, the prices has increased, the WPI has decreased, and this is a 40-month low. Now what is the reason? The reason is that there is a steady decrease in the inflation rates of manufactured goods. So the manufactured goods has registered a decrease in the inflation rates, and this is because there is a lower demand for manufacturing goods in the economy. So when there is lower demand, the supply also will fall, the prices will also fall. So that is why the manufactured goods has registered a low level of inflation. Now the WPI food inflation is 7.6%. So even though the WPI food inflation is 7.6%, the overall WPI inflation is just 0.16%, and this is because of the influence of manufactured goods, which has registered a very low rate of inflation. So this is one thing. Now moving on, let us see how we can compare WPI with that of CPI. So while comparing the WPI and the CPI, the WPI we have seen it has become a 40-month low in the month of October 2019. Now when we compare it with CPI, the CPI or the retail inflation, it has been a 16-month high. So what does it mean? So this essentially means that while the prices are falling or while the prices are growing at a very marginal rate at the wholesale level, the prices of goods and commodities at the consumer level, it is increasing. So the inflation is marked at the consumer level or at the retail level. So it indicates that a reversal has happened with case of consumer price index. So prices are growing at a faster rate, whereas in WPI the prices are falling or either they are growing marginally. That is why it has recorded a 0.16% growth in inflation rates. Now let us see why, the reason why this has happened. There can be many reasons, but the most probable reason is because of the differences in the indices. So two indices, one is CPI and another one is WPI. So the measurement of these indices are different. So that can be a very potential reason why this has happened. Now other reasons include, one, the information that is reaching the WPI and the CPI. And another very important reason, as we said, it is a difference in the indices. Let us see some examples. For example, the food articles. Food articles have higher weightage in the CPI. So we have already seen that the prices of food articles, food inflation has increased. So in CPI, the food articles have more weightage. So that can be one probable reason. In CPI, the weightage of food commodities is 45%, whereas in WPI it is just 30%. So that can be one probable reason. Now second one, fuel and energy. Now fuel and energy have much higher weightage in WPI inflation compared to CPI. Now when we talk about another example, that is services, they are only included in the CPI. That is, in WPI services are not included. So that can be another reason. So these are all some of the factors or reasons that might have influenced or impacted this differences in CPI and the WPI. Now let us analyze whether this phenomena has happened even before. So this has happened twice before, in 2012 and in 2015. That is, there was a divergence between the retail inflation, that is CPI, and the WPI, the wholesale inflation. In the year 2015, the WPI or the wholesale inflation was negative, whereas the retail inflation or the CPI was 7%. Now that time the reason was that services sector, which is referred only in the CPI, and that services sector was the reason. So in 2015 it was influenced by the services sector like education, medical facilities, etc. Now what impact will it make on policy making? Very important. So when we say policy making, it is not just the policy making of the government, that is the fiscal policy, but we must also consider the monetary policy or the policy made by the RBI. So we know that monetary policy, which is made by Monetary Policy Committee under the RBI, it considers inflation as the most important factor while making the policy. So what is to be understood is that this divergence in the CPI and the WPI can create confusions among the policy makers. Now let us see the example of RBI. If RBI is considering CPI, as we know, RBI is now at present considering CPI. So CPI inflation has recorded a 16-month high. So when the inflation rates is very high, the tendency of RBI would be to reduce the interest rates. This is because they are directly connected. When inflation rates are high, the RBI will also increase the interest rates. So there is a direct connection. So what happens? If RBI is considering CPI only, then they will have to definitely increase the interest rates. So when CPI inflation is high, they will increase interest rates, and when CPI inflation rates is low, they will reduce the interest rates. Now we have seen that WPI, it is recorded 40-month low. So what will happen? If RBI is considering WPI also, they have to reduce the interest rates to increase the money supply in the economy. So this makes a chance or a probability for a confusion among the policy makers, this divergence, and this is definitely a reflection of weakening of the economy. You can find the PDF of this lecture on our website www.studyiq.com. You can follow my Facebook page for more video updates. You can write to me at joycey.studyiq@gmail.com for any of your queries and clarification. Thank you.